A non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center. He joins us now live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Whitmore, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us here on TRT World. I want to start by asking, in your view, what are we seeing happening now in Georgia?
I mean, we're seeing a process play out that's been building for some years now. Effectively, we have a government in Georgia that has, for lack of a better term, has been captured by Russia. The Georgia Dream government is carrying out the will of the Russian regime. And you have a Georgian civil society that has made it very, very clear for decades now that it wants to move closer to the West. It wants to move closer to the European Union. It wants to move closer to NATO. And so we're basically seeing this coming to a head right now. You have a captured Russian-controlled government and a increasingly Western society driven by a younger generation that wants to be part of the Western world. And we're seeing this play out now, like we saw it play out in Ukraine years ago.
Well, we did in fact hear, though, from Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov today saying that Russia has nothing to do with what's happening in Georgia. But I mean, you're saying that it's a government captured by Russia. How has it been captured by Russia?
The only way to know that Dmitry Peskov is lying is that his lips are moving. So I'd start with that. But I mean, those of us that have been following Georgia for decades have seen this process unfold. Bidzina Ivanishvili, the leader of the Georgia Dream Party, who finances the party, who's the richest man in Georgia, who has more money than the Georgian state budget, and who earned all of his money in Russia, and his money is connected to Russia, was returned to Georgia in 2012 with the mission of basically capturing the state, and he has done that. He's done that. They won a free and fair election in 2012, but every single election since then that they have supposedly won has been highly questionable, to say the least. So yeah, the commanding heights of the Georgian government are in control of Georgian Dream, and Georgia Dream, particularly its leader Bidzina Ivanishvili, are controlled by Russia. It's pretty clear to anybody that pays attention to Georgia.
So, I mean, you're talking about this prime minister, right? If you look at the election, he won
He's
the
not
election.
the prime minister. He's the leader of the party.
Sorry, say that again?
He's not the prime minister. He holds no government post. He's the leader of the party, but he's the de facto leader of the country.
All right. Well, that's your view.
Prime minister is basically an errand boy.
All right. Again, he did win the last election. I know that there are allegations that it was rigged, and you know, he's been denying those things. He was also saying that, you know, he's instructed people at his foreign office to work towards a future EU membership. He's denying these allegations that he's sort of turning away from the EU. But again, you know, you're saying that he's been captured by Russia. He's carrying out the will of Russia. Why would Russia want that? What's in it for them to have Georgia heading towards Moscow and Russia?
Well, I'll take those pieces one at a time. As far as the election go, the European Parliament just voted last week overwhelmingly, I believe 444 to something in double digits, that the election was deeply flawed and does not represent the will of the Georgian people. The president of Georgia, Salome Zurabishvili, has also said that this government is illegitimate and the election is illegitimate. So starting with that, but in turn, he has taken a series of steps that have been clearly in Moscow's interest. He's upended a lot of business deals in Georgia, particularly the Anaklia port, which was basically had a lot of American and European investors behind it, basically turned that over to Chinese companies. They passed a law this past summer which forces every NGO getting money from any foreign organization to register as a foreign agent. It's an identical law to the one that was passed in Russia back in 2012. They stopped their negotiations with the EU right now. They want to renegotiate their accession talks. They're not even really candidates yet because this government has backslid on democracy so much. But they're clearly taking steps one after another in the election campaign. The campaign was that if you vote for the opposition, that means Russia's going to invade. Right? They derided the opposition as part of some so-called global party of war. We all know there's a global party of war, but that global party of war is located in Moscow.
I'm sorry, but I have to ask you, did you just say that if you vote for the opposition, Russia is going to invade?
That was part of the election campaign. I was just in Tbilisi in September. Yes. Yes, there were billboards in the center of Tbilisi showing the destruction in Ukraine. as a veiled threat to what was going to go on if they voted for the opposition.
Yeah, and also
This I
behind
saw
you,
with my own
sir,
eyes in
Mr. Whitmore,
2010.
behind you I see a flag, a Ukrainian flag. We heard from Russian
Yes.
officials today comparing what's happening in Georgia with what's been happening in Ukraine over the last 10 or so years. Do you see similarities between
I
Ukraine
see a
and
lot of
Georgia?
similar. I see similarities with Georgia and Ukraine to Ukraine in 2013, 2014. At that time, you had a pro-Russian government that was extremely corrupt and extremely kleptocratic, run by Viktor Yanukovych, that fell in the Revolution of Dignity in the winter of 2013, 2014. So I'm seeing a lot of parallels. This doesn't mean it's going to play out exactly the same as it did in Ukraine, but I see parallels right now, and I see parallels in the two societies where you basically have a rising generation that wants to live free of these autocratic kleptocracies and move closer to the European Union. That is clear as day for anybody that spends any time in Ukraine or Georgia.
All right, Brian Whitmore from the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us here on TRT World. Very good to hear your analysis.